Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I stared at the stack of credit card statements on the kitchen counter, my stomach tying itself into knots. Ashley had been acting strangely for weeks, constantly on her phone and making up excuses to go out. But these bills, thousands of dollars spent without any explanation. What the hell was going on? The front door opened and Ashley breezed in, dropping her purse on the couch. "Hey babe, I'm home." I whirled around, the statements crinkling in my fist. "We need to talk. What's with all these charges?" I shoved the papers towards her. $4,000 at a jewelry store? $600 for a hotel stay? What's gotten into you? Ashley's eyes widened briefly before she plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, those? It's nothing. Just treating myself a bit." "With what money?" I snapped. "Because I sure as hell didn't authorize this kind of spending. We're supposed to be saving up, not blowing it all on God knows what." She waved a dismissive hand. "Relax, I've got it covered. My investments finally paid off, that's all." "Investments?" The lie was so blatant it made my blood boil. "Don't give me that crap. You know damn well neither of us has investments like that." Ashley's cheeks flushed, and she crossed her arms defensively. "Why are you overreacting? It's my money. I can spend it how I want." "It's our money," I countered. "That's what marriage means. We're supposed to be a team here, but you've been shutting me out for weeks. What's really going on, Ash?" Her mouth opened and closed, grasping for another excuse. With a frustrated groan, she spun on her heel and stormed towards the bedroom. "I don't have to explain myself to you." I followed close behind, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. "Yes, you do. I'm your husband, damn it. If you can't be honest with me, why did we even get married?" The bedroom door slammed in my face. I stood there, clenching and unclenching my fists as doubts and worries swirled through my mind. What had happened to the woman I fell in love with? Why was she keeping secrets and lying straight to my face? A pit formed in my stomach, a nagging suspicion that whatever was going on, it wasn't good. The next afternoon, I was half watching a baseball game when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my buddy Nathan. "Hey man, you're not gonna believe this. I had to drop off some files at your boss's place earlier. Guess who I saw leaving just as I got there? Ashley." My heart stopped. I quickly typed back, "You're kidding me. Are you sure?" A moment later, a photo appeared on the screen. There was no mistaking that red dress or those blonde curls. It was undeniably Ashley, hurrying out of the apartment building with her head down. "I'm so sorry, dude. I know how this looks." I could barely see through the haze of anger and betrayal clouding my vision. So that's where all the money was going. Fancy hotels to meet up with her lover. And not just any lover, my own boss. The sick feeling of suspicion crystallized into a cold, hard knot in the pit of my stomach. How could she do this to me? After everything we'd been through together, all the plans we'd made for our future, Ashley had looked me in the eye and lied, time and time again. She made a fool out of me. Well, not anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let her walk all over me. If she thought she could just discard me for a fling with her boss, she had another thing coming. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my daze. I flung the door open to find Ashley standing there, surprised by my abrupt greeting. "Michael? Is everything okay? You look—" "Don't even start," I snarled, holding up the picture for her to see. "Care to explain what you were doing at Jake's apartment?" Her face drained of color. That's not— How did you—" "Save it." I cut her off, lip curling in disgust. "I know you've been cheating on me. With my own boss, of all people. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" Ashley opened and closed her mouth, desperately searching for an excuse. When none came, she simply stared at me with those big doe eyes that had once melted my heart. But now, they just filled me with rage. "Don't look at me like that," I spat. "Or did you think I'd never find out about your little affair?" Tears sprang to her eyes, but I had no sympathy left to give. She'd made her choices, and she was going to face the consequences. "Michael, please. It's not what you think. I can explain." "Explain what?" I roared, making her flinch. "How you threw away 10 years of marriage. How you stabbed me in the back with the person I trusted most in this world." "No, There's no explaining that kind of betrayal. I shoved past her, rage burning through my veins. If she wanted out of this marriage so badly, fine by me. She could have her precious boss. Because as of right now, Ashley and I were through. I needed to confront both of them face to face the next day. I found myself sitting across from Ashley and Jake at a cafe downtown. My hands were clenched into fists under the table as I struggled to contain my emotions. Ashley broke the tense silence. Michael, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but Jake and we've fallen in love. Jake nodded solemnly, reaching across to take Ashley's hand. It's true. I know this is difficult, but we can't fight our feelings any longer. White-hot rage flared within me. Are you kidding me right now? You're leaving me for him? I'm sorry, Michael. I truly am, Ashley said, though her expression remained impassive. But this is what I want. Jake understands me in a way you never could. Jake turned to me with an infuriatingly smug look. Listen, son. Sometimes these things just happen. Ashley and I have something special. He dropped to one knee, producing a small black box. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized what he was doing. Ashley, my love, you've made me the happiest man alive. Will you marry me? She beamed at him through fresh tears. Yes, of course. Oh, Jake. As they embraced, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife was leaving me for my own boss, and he had the audacity to propose right in front of me, rubbing salt in the wound. You son of a bitch, I growled, rising to my feet. You've been screwing my wife behind my back this whole time? Jake arched an eyebrow coolly. I'd watch your language if I were you. We wouldn't want to make a scene, would we? Like I care, I shouted, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. You're dead to me. You hear me? Both of you. Ashley flinched but held Jake's arm tightly. Michael, please, let's not do this. Do what? I spat. Call out your blatant disrespect? Your disgusting betrayal? You threw away 10 years like it was nothing. Fury coursed through me, and I could feel my control slipping. Before I could stop myself, I reached across the table and grabbed Jake by the collar, yanking him forward. I ought to bash your face in, you smug bastard. Michael, stop. Ashley cried as Jake struggled against my iron grip. Think about what you're doing. He's dead, I snarled, pulling back my free hand to strike. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from that man. The gruff voice startled me from my rage-induced haze. I glanced over to see 2 police officers approaching our table, hands resting on their batons warningly. Reluctantly, I released Jake. His shirt rumpled from my grasp. He smoothed out the fabric with a sneer of disdain. Are you going to let this maniac attack me in broad daylight, officers? One of the cops fixed me with a hard look. That's enough from both of you. I suggest you all go your separate ways before this escalates further. I opened my mouth to protest, but Ashley cut me off with a pleading look. Come on, Michael. He's not worth it. Let's just go, please. Grinding my teeth, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the cafe, the cops' watchful eyes tracking my movements. Once outside, I paused to catch my breath, the weight of the situation crashing over me in waves. How could she do this? How could Ashley, the woman I loved more than anything, throw it all away for that arrogant prick? The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. And Jake, that bastard had known exactly what he was doing, sleeping with his employee's wife, then having the gall to propose to her in front of me? He was a world-class scumbag. Michael? Michael, wait. Ashley came hurrying after me, Jake nowhere in sight. I scowled at her approach. What? Come to twist the knife a little more. Kick me while I'm down? She flinched as if struck. Don't be like that, please. I never meant to hurt you. You have to believe me. Yeah, right? I scoffed bitterly. Because cheating on your husband is totally not hurtful at all. Ashley's eyes widened beseechingly. Jake's not the man you think he is. He's different with me, I swear. I laughed derisively. Wake up, Ash. That slimeball is a serial cheater, and you're just his latest conquest. Once the thrill is gone, he'll drop you like a bad habit. No, you're wrong, she insisted, grabbing my arm. He loves me. I know he does. You're just jealous, that's all. Wrenching free of her grasp, I leveled her with a look of utter disgust. Don't flatter yourself. I'm done being jerked around by you and that douchebag. We're through. You hear me? Finished. Ashley opened her mouth, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks, but I cut her off with a curt shake of my head. Save your breath. I want nothing to do with either of you ever again. As I turned to leave, the prospect of divorcing the woman I'd once loved with every fiber of my being left a hollow ache in my chest. Still, I knew there was no other choice. She'd made her decision, and I wasn't going to stick around and let myself be humiliated any further. I had my self-respect to think about now. Ashley had forced my hand. So that was it. After a decade of marriage, we were over, thanks to her torrid affair with my scumbag boss. Well, they could have each other, because from here on out, I was putting them both in the rear view for good. A few weeks after the cafe incident, I was lying on my couch, half watching reruns on TV when my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Dude, you're never gonna believe this. I saw Ashley and Jake preparing for their wedding, and you're not even divorced yet. My heart plummeted into my stomach as I read those words over and over again. Of course, those two wasted no time tying the knot, eager to flaunt their sordid affair in everyone's face. For a moment, I just sat there, numb with disbelief. I should have seen this coming from a mile away. After all, why would that snake Jake waste any time locking down his latest squeeze? My grip tightened around the phone as a wave of anger crashed over me. No, I wasn't going to take this lying down. Not after the humiliation and anguish they'd put me through. If they thought I'd just sit back and let them ride off into the sunset together, they had another thing coming. An idea began to take root in my mind. A delicious scheme for vengeance that made the corners of my mouth twitch upwards. Oh yes, payback was definitely in order here. I fired off a quick text to Nathan. Do you still have access to Jake's place? I'm gonna need a favor. Later that night, my doorbell rang, shaking me from my scheming. I swung it open to find Nathan looking apprehensive. Hey man, wasn't sure if you'd actually go through with this or not. I grinned wolfishly. Of course I am. That two-timing bastard humiliated me in the worst way. It's time he learned his actions have consequences. Nathan sighed and pulled out a sleek silver laptop from his bag. Well, here you go. Managed to snag Jake's computer while he was out schmoozing clients. Rubbing my hands together eagerly, I took the laptop and set it on the kitchen counter. Now we're gonna see what skeletons our dear friend Jake has been hiding in his closet. With a few deft keystrokes, I bypassed the login screen and began digging through the files. What I found made my blood boil hotter with each passing minute. Explicit photos, racy text exchanges, a literal digital trail of Jake's infidelities with multiple women. The sheer scope of his depraved behavior was staggering. No wonder he'd latched onto Ashley so easily. His conquests were just a series of notches on his bedpost to him. Son of a bitch, I growled under my breath. Ashley was just his latest victim, doomed to be discarded and tossed aside like the others once he inevitably grew bored and set his sights on fresh prey. Well, not this time. If exposing this sleazeball to the world was the only way to make him pay, then so be it. And I knew just where to start. My palms were slick with nervous sweat as I adjusted my tie in the mirror. Tonight was the night, Jake's big company gala, an over-the-top spectacle where the city's rich and powerful would gather to schmooze and gossip over overpriced champagne. More importantly, it was where I would finally expose that lying, cheating scumbag for the world-class snake he truly was. Thanks to the evidence unearthed from his laptop, I'd managed to track down over a dozen of Jake's jilted exes and side pieces, all too eager to help bring him down. With their stories compiled alongside the incriminating photos and messages, there was more than enough firepower to detonate his carefully cultivated facade once and for all. Now it was just a matter of setting the bomb off at the right moment, in front of the right crowd. This is really happening, huh? Nathan said from beside me, looking equally nervous in his rented tux. No going back after tonight. I shot him a grim smile. Damn right, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That bastard needs to be taken down a few thousand pegs. Soon, we were ushered into the swanky hotel ballroom where the gala was taking place. Bigwig executives and socialite trophy wives mingled around towering ice sculptures and lavish hors d'oeuvres displays, sipping champagne with diamonds winking from delicate wrists and throats. It made me sick just being in the same room with them. These shallow people who cared more about appearances than basic human decency. But I steeled my nerves. They were about to get an education tonight in just how ugly the underbelly of their world really was. The evening's festivities hit their crescendo as Jake took the stage to the polite applause of the assembled guests, beaming beside Ashley in her virginal white gown. My stomach twisted at the sight of them playing house after the hell they'd put me through. "What an honor it is to stand before you all tonight," Jake began in his signature smarmy drawl. "You're the pillars of our community, the bastions of integrity and—" I'd heard enough. With a sharp nod, I signaled my small army of jilted lovers, stationed around the perimeter of the ballroom. Time for the fireworks to begin. One by one, they began ascending the small stage, corralling a confused and flustered Jake while his new bride looked on in frozen terror. First it was his high school sweetheart, Amanda, tears of rage glistening in her eyes. "You ruined me, you bastard!" she shouted over the rising murmurs of the crowd. "How many nights did I spend crying over your lies?" Then came Rachel, one of his more recent flings if the cocktail dress left little to the imagination. "You promised we had a real future together, that you were going to leave your wife for me." More angry voices began to swell, each woman taking their turn to hurl accusations at the panicked and backpedaling Jake. "You told me the same thing. He got me fired when I threatened to expose him. I can't even look at pictures of my kids without thinking about you." The gala had descended into utter pandemonium by this point. Security tried to intervene, but a few well-placed guests actually stopped them with a few choice words. "Let them have their say," a gruff, authoritative voice rang out over the din. "I want to hear every sordid detail of what this degenerate has been up to." Jake whirled towards me with undisguised hatred burning in his eyes, jabbing an accusatory finger. "This is all you're doing, isn't it? Can't take the heat, so you're trying to burn me at the stake?" Squaring my shoulders, I stepped up beside the parade of wronged women taking their turn to vent their fury. "I'm just giving a voice to the victims you victimized along the way, Jake," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's only fair they get their turn after you spent so long lying to and manipulating them." With a few taps on my laptop, I pulled up the truly damning photo and text evidence, letting it cycle through on the massive screen behind us in high definition. Gasps and cries of outrage echoed through the ballroom as the sordid reality was laid bare. "These are just the highlights, folks," I went on mercilessly. "But I'm sure you're all getting the picture by now of what a lying, cheating, narcissistic scumbag our esteemed leader really is." Jake was melting down in real time before our eyes, his perfectly curated world of deception imploding in spectacular fashion. Ashley had gone ghostly pale, seeming to waver on her feet at the sheer scope of her new husband's transgressions. With a roar of rage, Jake turned and shoved past the closest security guard, nearly bowling the man over as he fled the ballroom in disgrace. For a long, suspended moment, all you could hear were Ashley's muffled sobs echoing through the shocked silence. Then, the spell was broken as the socialite vultures turned on her, hurling vile taunts and accusations from every direction. "You stupid little. How could you do this to Mary and the kids? I hope you're happy with yourself." Ashley was frozen in terror, tears streaking her delicately made-up face. Witnessing this terror, I finally turned to Ashley, who was crumpled against a table with her head in her hands. Slowly, hesitantly, she lifted her gaze to meet mine. "Michael, I'm so sorry," she whispered brokenly. "You were right about him all along. I just couldn't see it." For a heartbeat, I simply drank in the sight of her devastation, letting it salve the wounds of her betrayal. Then I slowly shook my head. "Save it, Ash. It's too little, too late. This is the bed you made. Now you can lie in it. Alone." Setting the laptop down with a dull thud, I slipped through the milling crowd, leaving the circus behind me. Somehow, I felt no sense of victory or triumph, just grim determination. Jake had finally gotten the comeuppance he deserved, taken down before the very pillars of high society he'd worked so hard to ingratiate himself with. Funny how things turned out that way sometimes. A few weeks later, my lawyer set the final divorce papers down in front of me with a decisive thump. "Just sign here, and it'll all be over," he said solemnly. I picked up the pen, taking a deep, steadying breath. This was it, the final severance from the life I'd once known. After exposing Jake's seedy secret life and watching him get what was coming to him, tying off this last loose end was almost anticlimactic. Almost. Still, a tiny part of me ached as I scrawled my signature across the dotted line. No matter how badly Ashley had betrayed me, there was a decade of history being erased with those few pen strokes. Memories, both good and bad, came flooding back unbidden. The rustle of her white dress on our wedding day, the musical peal of her laughter over romantic dinners, holding her close on sleepless nights fraught with worry and doubt. So much water under the proverbial bridge now. My hand stilled as the apartment door opened and Ashley herself strode in. She froze upon seeing me, eyes going wide like a deer caught in the headlights. "Michael, I didn't expect you here." I arched an eyebrow coolly, just tying up some loose ends. Holding up the now signed paperwork, I let the weight of the moment hang heavy in the air between us. Ashley seemed to wilt under my unblinking stare, wringing her hands anxiously. "I can't tell you how sorry I am," she finally said in a small, tremulous voice. "What I did, there's no excuse for it. I was selfish and stupid, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I simply nodded, having heard these empty platitudes too many times before. Actions spoke far louder than words, after all. "I'm trying to make amends," she went on, a pleading note creeping into her voice. "Getting help? Going to therapy? Maybe one day I can become someone you could actually respect again." A derisive snort escaped me before I could stop it. "You never respected me in the first place, Ash. If you had, we wouldn't be standing here dealing with the fallout of your betrayal." Her shoulders sagged in defeat as my words hit their mark. For a long while, we simply studied each other in silence, so much left unsaid yet painfully understood. Finally, I held out the divorce paperwork, putting an end to the slow, agonizing death of what we once had. "This is really it then?" she said, almost childlike in her bewilderment. "Afraid so," I replied softly. "We had a good run, I'll give you that. But we can't go back, and I wouldn't want to even if I could." Ashley nodded, swiping away the tears spilling down her cheeks as she accepted the documents. Just like that, it was over. The closing of one chapter and the shaky, uncertain start of another. She turned to leave, but paused in the doorway, looking back at me with those haunted, red-rimmed eyes. "For what it's worth, I really did love you once. Maybe that makes it worse, I don't know." A pang went through me at her words. Maybe, in some alternate reality, we could have made it work. But that possibility had been obliterated, a casualty of her moment of weakness and betrayal. "Yeah, well?" I sighed, suddenly bone-tired. "Love don't mean much without trust and respect backing it up, does it?" She seemed to wilt a little more at that, but offered no protest as she slipped out the door and out of my life for good. I watched her go, the ache in my chest slowly starting to dissipate. It was over. Finally, after all the lies and hurt and emotional turmoil, I could start to move on and heal. A strange sense of hopefulness began to bloom in my heart, despite everything. Sure, there would always be scars from this nightmare chapter, but at least now I could look towards the future unencumbered by the baggage of my failed marriage. Better things awaited on the other side. Maybe even a second shot at real, true happiness. I wasn't there yet, but I would be. One step at a time. Only time would tell where this new chapter would lead. But for once, I felt cautiously optimistic about finding out. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.